Time is running out. That is from the moment we first opened our eyes in this life. I wish we were taught this in school from a very young age. Time is running out. Every time we breathe, every time we think, because we have a tendency of thinking that things are permanent, which is the real disease, the real virus, the real poison. Thinking that things are permanent drives us, in fact, from life to life. From thinking that the next breath is guaranteed, it's going to come in. The body that I inhabit now, let's say if the person has a very, very healthy body, your eyes work. Even if both of your eyes or one eye works, that's a great blessing. The legs work. Oh, that's a huge blessing. You can carry yourself from where you're sitting to the bathroom on your own, by yourself. You don't need help. That's an incredible, great fortune. But we don't think like that. We just think that things are permanent, especially when things are very good. The body functions. Perhaps you're in a very good financial situation. You finally made it. You received your education, your career, etc., whatever it may be, your relationship with someone. And then what? The undercurrent called life was always happening, uninterruptedly, in fact. And when things do go off whack by not following our own dictates, meaning the impermanence of life comes through, whether we get sick or we lose our status, or somebody says something disagreeable to us, somebody does something painful to us, the world doesn't function the way we would like it to. All these things make that whole jigsaw puzzle collapse, fall apart. But it was always falling apart from the moment we open our eyes. But life is a gift, especially a human life that we have. A gift if we know what to do with it. That's why time is running out, because the body still functions. The memory still works. We can ponder, we can process, we can investigate. It will become extremely arduous, terribly difficult when you have to deal with a physical ailment that you weren't expecting, such as a terrible backache or some terrible spine injury, or the world around you collapsing. You're losing everything you worked for. Then it becomes really difficult to use life to penetrate through the delusion that we've been carrying, one of which is thinking that life is permanent, or the body is, or things are permanent, at least in one area. Nothing is. That's the first declaration that the Buddha made, anicca. And it seems that we try so hard to convince us otherwise, to convince us that the Buddha was wrong. No. In this area, my life here, I'm going to outsmart the system. We might not say it out loud, but we nevertheless live our lives as if it were like that. And that's why we get disappointed, because all of a sudden you have gray hairs, you have a few wrinkles, your loved ones start dying, your grandmother dies, your parents, or your child. That is beyond jolting. That is earth-shattering. That's another way of understanding as to why I said things are passing so fast that we're running out of time. For that reason, applying sati is incredibly powerful, because it pulls you out from the movie theater of thinking that things are permanent. The movie theater meaning our mind, what we think constantly, the ideas, the new sannyas, the perceptions that we bring in to augment, to create this truly virtual reality. But in fact has no basis on reality. Reality has everything to do with impermanence. Reality has everything to do with understanding that because of impermanence, there is suffering that one has to encounter, has to experience. But we don't stop there, because once we apply sati, understanding, penetrative insight, then lo and behold, we see through the frames of the movie, we see through the big play. We understand that it has everything to do with the attachment that we held on to, the things that can never be held on to. Suddenly we experience nirodha, suddenly we experience cessation of pain, of suffering, because we're seeing things as they are. Yatha bhutang pajanati, the Buddha says. Suddenly things start unraveling. This is when we have insights. Your behavior changes, your personality every day becomes more and more cleansed and purified. There's a behavioral transformation happening. Not ideas. You're not collecting ideas, concepts, reality. That's what's happening. Your reality is changing. Because for one, you're not holding on to things as being permanent. So think of that as a melody or undercurrent of today's session here, because today it's a special session. I wanted us to explore so it's going to be two separate suttas, but it's a special one because I've selected lay people as the protagonists for today's talk. Two very important disciples, lay disciples of the Buddha, that often people don't know about. And that's why these suttas are wonderful, because not just they serve the purpose of being reminders, but they're encouraging, they're inspirational. They're inspirational to keep on your path, to keep practicing diligently, to see that you're not experiencing life for the first time here. Others have dealt with the difficulties that you and I face. And the outcome of that, which is joy, which is release, which is freedom, and living happily right here, right now. So this path of Dhamma that the Buddha taught does not promise us a heavenly birth, heavenly, delightful, once you close your eyes, basically, then everything is going to be beautiful type of a thing. No, this is not the path for such a thing. The Buddha never taught that. Whatever joyful or beautiful thing to be experienced because of the Dhamma or Buddhism, whatever is to be gained, experienced, must prove its worth, must prove itself as a reality for you in this life. So nothing is promised later. That's why it's not based on blind belief of anything. Whatever changes, transformations are supposed to happen to me, they have to prove themselves to be real here. And that's why this path sets itself apart from anything else. Before, during, and ever since the Buddha taught this path. So for both, in fact, it's 3 suttas. So I'll do it in 2 bundles. But they're from the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses, which is a vast reservoir of discourses. Both of these groups or groupings will come from the book of the 8th, and it's the Hatthaka Nipāta from the Anguttara Nikaya, therefore the numerical discourses, and from the section that discusses the Gahapati. Gahapati means householders, lay people, in modern parlance, lay people, men and women. So it's called the Gahapati Vagga, the section on householders. This one, which I'll do first, is the number is AN 8.22, Anguttara Nikaya 8.22. And the title is Dutiya Ugga Sutta. And whenever you hear the word Dutiya, Dutiya in Pali means the second or part 2. There's 2 back to back with the same title, the same person, in fact. Ugga, the lay person and the householder. So I picked not the Paṭhama, Paṭhama means the first, Dutiya means the second. So I picked this one because it resonated with me even more. So I was caught between either one, which one? So I chose this one for us to discuss about him. The other grouping suttas will be of another lay person, another lay disciple. So in English, I translated as Ugga of Hatthigāma, or the second discourse on Ugga. Here we go. At one time, while the Blessed One was living among the Vajjis at Hatthigāma, he addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, you must ponder and bring to mind how the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma is endowed with 8 wonderful and amazing qualities. Having said this, the Tathagata arose from his seat and went into his kuti. This was one of the instigating moves, if you will, that the Buddha used to use to get people to try to figure out what the Buddha meant. To get the disciple, to get the student to really invest in their understanding by doing some investigation, by doing some research. I mean, at least you would be curious, like, okay, who is Ugga? Why 8? Why not 7? And could you tell us more, Bhante? None of that. He just got up and left. Of course, we don't know much of the context, the background, but we'll find out more as we go on. Then, when it was morning, a certain bhikkhu, having put on his robes, while taking his bowl and outer robe, paid a visit to the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma and sat on the prepared seat. It was typical for the disciples or even the bhikkhus to have a place where, in case a bhikkhu showed up, sometimes they would be thinking that the Buddha might show up. So they would really prepare a seat just in case the Buddha would show up or a teacher would show up at the door. So you would not miss that opportunity to invite them in, provide some food for them, some support, and then hopefully wait for them to, or encouragingly ask them if they could teach you some Dhamma, which is all a big bouquet of wonderful merits right there. So this was the case apparently, where there was a seat prepared. In this case, the Bhikkhu sits. By approaching that Bhikkhu, the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma paid homage to him with clasped hands and sat to one side. Then that Bhikkhu addressed Ugga, the householder of Hatthigāma, thus. By the way, we don't know the name of the Bhikkhu. He's always left as a certain Bhikkhu, so he went nameless. In the Sutta, we don't have his name recorded, but it's not that important. So he addressed Ugga. So the Bhikkhu is asking the question to Ugga. Householder, the Blessed One has declared that you are endowed with 8 wonderful and amazing qualities. Householder, what are those 8 wonderful and amazing qualities which you possess, as told by the Blessed One? So he came to find out from Ugga himself. Probably he didn't have the courage to ask the Buddha, knock on the door, Bhante, could you please tell us about Ugga? He just, I'm going to go and find out from Ugga himself. And that's what he's doing. And this is Ugga's response. Bhante, I do not know of the wonderful and amazing qualities that the Blessed One has declared. Yet there are 8 wonderful and amazing qualities that are undeniably present in me. Now listen and attend carefully, Bhante. I will list them for you. This is very interesting delivery. Listen and attend carefully. You can tell. This is like you can say this is a lion's roar coming up. Yes, householder, said the Bhikkhu by consenting, and the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma continued. Bhante, the first day that I saw the Blessed One approaching in the distance, I was in the Elephant's Grove Park. The moment I saw him, suddenly my mind became established in faith by acquiring confidence in the Tathagata. This is the first wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. A little bit of a background about that encounter. He's from Hatthigāma. Hatthigāma is a city, you can call it a village, a town, within the greater kingdom or principality of the Vajji country, which is Vesali. To this day it exists, or Vaishali it's called in modern India. Hatthigāma means where the elephants roam, or the area where they used to train and raise elephants, tame them, etc., give them to the kings, this and that. So he was there, being a very rich householder. He was enjoying himself with dancers and his wives. As he saw the Buddha approach, he felt ashamed, just observing the Buddha. And at that moment, faith arose in his heart. Confidence arose in his heart. He wasn't stating derogatory statements or criticizing or critiquing the Buddha from a distance, seeing him. He was observing him, however. And that says a lot, because the person has to be humble enough to put their own prejudices, ideas, interpretations of life and people aside and just see the person in front of him openly, with an open heart, open mind. There isn't much convincing involved because the Buddha hadn't said anything to him, yet faith arose in his heart. Do we have that quality in us? Can we see ourselves having that quality? Just a question. Next. Bhante, with a delighted mind supported by that confidence, I attended on the Blessed One, and the Blessed One gave me a gradual discourse while teaching me the benefits of making offerings. It's in Pali, it's called anupubba, gradual, progressive, stage by stage. So while teaching the benefits of making offerings, dana, that's where we start when we teach someone. As bhikkhus, we get that example from the Buddha himself. Of living a virtuous life, that is sila. That's the next stage. and on heavenly bliss, meaning the devas, heavenly life, the divine realms. In addition, he showed me the dangers of sensuality, their defiling nature, leading one to vile and low states of being, as well as the blessings of renunciation. Remember, he was not a bhikkhu, he was a layperson, and he died a layperson. But when we see renunciation, nekkhamma in this case here, where the person is secluding himself or herself from sensuality, running after things of the senses, then the mind relaxes. You're not agitated. You don't live with raga and passion anymore. You're even keeled, as they say. You're tranquil, harmonious, relaxed, and seeing things the way they really are. So the mind is settled. Then, when the Blessed One knew that my mind was ready, tender, free from obstructions, exalted and tranquilized, he gave me the teaching that is specifically taught by the Buddhas, which is the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause and origin of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. The Four Noble Truths. That is what we mean by the specific teaching that is only provided by the Buddha or one of his disciples, or the dispensation that he taught and he passed away, he died, and still it lingers like the case is today. That's why we have every possibility of becoming arahants today, because you don't need to have a Buddha living today, because the Dhamma is living still today. The Buddha said, he who sees the Dhamma sees me. So the Dhamma, Buddha are equal. If it is the true Dhamma that we're talking about, which he taught. And he continues, then, while I sat there motionless, just as a clean cloth, free of any stains or impurities, would easily and evenly take on the dye. The clean cloth takes on the dye when it's clean, right? In the same manner, suddenly, the stainless and purified eye of Dhamma arose in me, as I saw and understood clearly. Whatever arises from a cause is also destined to cease. At that exact instant, I saw the truth, and that is the Dhamma. I understood the Dhamma. I penetrated the Dhamma. And suddenly, bewilderments disappeared, and I crossed, once and for all, the sea of doubts by attaining the self-confidence that the Dhamma provides, as I became solidly established in the dispensation of the great teacher, no longer needing to look for any other teacher henceforth. It was right there that I took refuge in the Blessed One, in the Dhamma, and in the Sangha of Bhikkhus, and I observed the 5 precepts of the holy life, including the precept of to remain celibate. This, Bhante, is the second wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. First of all, there's a few things happening here. When he says, I saw the truth, that is the Dhamma, I understood the Dhamma, I penetrated the Dhamma, these are references to attaining, at the very least, the first stage of awakening, Sotapanna. He became a stream winner. And then he adds qualifiers to that statement in case there are doubts in the mind of the bhikkhu listening, such as the confidence that arises. It's unprecedented. The person's mind, heart, has never experienced anything like it. That's why it's a once in a lifetime experience. You cannot attain Sotapanna or Sotapatti again and again and again. Boom, it's a one-time thing. but it changes the person completely to the core. That's why the person cannot take a step back into the way they were, because there's clarity in the mind to the point where they can never, ever, ever take on another teacher essay or a teaching and say, you know, that also could be true. It's a different variation of this same thing. That can never happen. That's why anyone who's attained, they say they've attained, can never come back later on and equate the Dhamma with some other teaching out there or some other teacher. It doesn't work. And this is only one example, by the way. There's so many other examples throughout the suttas. That's why you cannot have various teachers for you at that point, because you pass the point of no return, literally. That's why the person has at the most 7 more lifetimes until they become at the most to attain arahantship. So, and that's when the person naturally takes refuge in the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Now here, the third part of this paragraph, he says, I observe the 5 precepts of the holy life, brahmacharya. So the 5 precepts, in this case, given that he's adding the holy life, and he clarifies it later on by saying also the precept to remain celibate. So instead of wrong sexual or sensual actions, he substituted it with the practice of celibacy. That is the path, the practice of the holy life in this case, in that category of the sila arrangement, because we're still talking about 5 precepts only. So he removed third one, substituted it with the celibacy. So when you take, as a layperson, when you take 5 precepts, you're not taking that precept unless you want to, which is what you are supposed to do when you are taking, when you're living the uposatha day or the weekend or even a week. You do not engage in any sexual activity. So you try to get the taste or flavor of living the holy life. But in this case, he took it because he was really moved to do so. But lay people are not expected to. That's what I'm trying to say. Unless they want to, of course, like here. And he adds to this, Bhante, I had 4 young wives. I approached all of them and told them, sisters, I now observe the 5 precepts of the holy life, including the precept to remain celibate. If you so desire, you may stay and partake of the wealth I possess while engaging in actions that produce merits. Or you may go back to your parents and relatives. Or if you desire to be married to another man, then do let me know and I will give you to him to marry. So from that moment, they were free to choose to go and, let's say, either to their parents, to their relatives, if they didn't have their parents. Or the moment he says sisters, already it's nullified. The marriage is gone because he's already taken the celibacy. That's no way of maintaining a marriage or married life unless both partners, they become partners. They become like siblings. They become sister and brother. But it can't be forced upon the other. So the other person will have to have a say in it, of course. When this was said, the most senior among them, the wives, replied, Young lord, please give me to such and such a man. So I sent for that man. And with my left hand, I took the hand of my young wife, and with my right hand, I took the ceremonial water jar, as I sprinkled water and gave her away to that man in marriage. While I was giving up my young wife, I did not detect any changes taking place in my heart. This is the third wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. How many people are able to do that you know? Can we do that? Somebody might come and say, hey, can I borrow your car for the weekend? Many people have a tough time even letting their car be driven by someone else, let alone one's own mate, to be given away willfully, willingly, lovingly, but without having any kind of a perturbance, any kind of shaking in their heart, any doubt. What am I doing? I'm letting go of my wife. This doesn't mean that he didn't love them, but he knows that he cannot perform as a spouse should to maintain that marriage. So he says, this is the third wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. Bhante, I come from a very wealthy family where generosity reigns, and the wealth is freely distributed with those individuals who possess good character and are virtuous in behavior. This is the fourth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. And that's a blessing we oftentimes don't consider. The family in which you were born, or you're situated, or you were supported by, or you are supported by, are very important to, well, the quality of the Dhammic life that you will have, or become a major deterrent, major obstacle. So that has also to do with the kamma, right? We talked about extensively last time. But in this case, he's saying my family is already very wealthy and very generous. They're open-handed in their generosity. But they don't do it simply because they want to show off, but they come from a good character and virtue. So they don't do it to show the community, to, to impress them. And he says that's the fourth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. Bhante, if I associate with and attend on bhikkhus, I do so with the fullness of my attention and with respect. If the bhikkhus teach me the Dhamma, I listen with the fullness of my attention and with respect. And if it so happens that they do not teach me, then I teach them the Dhamma. This is the fifth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. We have a tendency to think that every bhikkhu or nun is supposed to teach Dhamma. Well, ideally, but in reality, many people can't, or don't know how to, or they fake it. In this case, just like in the case of Chitta, the householder, we have a lay disciple who's saying this. And remember, it came validated by the Buddha, from the Buddha's own lips, when he said the eight wonderful qualities of Ugga, of Hatthigāma. So this is the fifth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me, he says. Bhante, when the Sangha has been invited for a meal at my home, it is quite common for the devas and divine beings to approach and tell me, householder, this bhikkhu is liberated by both methods. That other bhikkhu is liberated through wisdom. The other one is a body witness. That other bhikkhu has attained to right view. The other one is liberated through faith. And that one is a Dhamma follower. The other bhikkhu follows through faith. That one over there is virtuous and of good behavior. The other bhikkhu there is without any virtue and an immoral man and of bad character. The devas are telling him this. But despite knowing these facts about them, Bhante, as I am serving the Sangha, I do not recall ever pondering to myself, well, let me give more food to this bhikkhu and much less to that one over there. Instead, I look upon them non-preferentially by offering them food with an equanimous mind. This is the sixth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. Imagine if you had that facility where the devas come and give you the inside scoop, as they say, of who it is that you are donating to or giving food to. And what would be, take it a step further, what would be your reaction as to, the details you just learned about that person? These are principles for us to be aspiring to emulate, at least, to become moved by, and to mimic even, until it becomes part of our character as well. Because these are noble qualities. Bhante, it is quite common for the devas and divine beings to approach and tell me, householder, the Dhamma of the Blessed One is well taught indeed. Then I tell them, well, whether you say so or not, I know that the Dhamma of the Blessed One is well taught. But on account of this, and the fact that the devas and divine beings approach and converse with me, this does not make me feel any elation, as I do not detect the presence of conceit in my heart. This is the seventh wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. He doesn't show off. He doesn't tell his students, go and tell other people to kind of get their attention and to see that I am special, that my teacher sees and communicates with devas. No. That's equivalent to musavada, spreading falsehood to get some gain. And plus, he's correcting the devas. He's saying, in a sense, he's correcting them. He's saying, whether you tell me that the Dhamma that the Buddha taught is really beautiful, beautiful in its beginning, beautiful in its middle, beautiful in its end, I know it. I don't have to take your word for it. And that is what comes naturally to a Sotapanna. They don't work for it. Once they have that, they don't convince. That's what I mean by they don't work for it. It's natural. It reverberates constantly in their heart, whether they're awake or they're asleep. That's why the person has become transformed. So that's the seventh quality, he says. And Bhante, if I were to die before the Blessed One, I live with confidence that the Blessed One would declare about me, Ugga of Hatthigāma is no more bound by those fetters that would lead him to be reborn in this human world again. This is the eighth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me. By the way, that is his declaration that he had broken through the five fetters, lower fetters, when there is the categorical statement that this person will never come back to the human world. Because even if a person is Sakadagami, a once returner, they can either come to human realm or a divine realm one more time, but either. So the possibility of being born as a human is still there on the table, as it were. But for someone whose fetters have been shattered, the five, they can never come back. That's why they're called Anāgāmi. So he did not say, Bhante, I'm an Anāgāmi. Did you hear that? Nowhere he mentioned that, because that he detected could be perceived as conceit in me. So he didn't say it. He said, the Buddha would declare about me as not having any more fetters that would drag me back into the human world. Look how he phrased it. Because whether the Bhikkhu knows this or not, Ugga of Hatthigāma is teaching Dhamma to that Bhikkhu right now. He's teaching him about proper character. He's teaching him about relinquishing conceit. If the Bhikkhu really is taking it as such, he's open to it. Hopefully he is. So this is the eighth wonderful and amazing quality that is undeniably present in me, he says. Then, having listened carefully to what Ugga of Hatthigāma stated, and after accepting the food offered at the home of the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma, the Bhikkhu went away. Once the meal was over, the bhikkhu approached the Blessed One, and after paying homage to the teacher, he sat to one side and related all that took place earlier that day, the conversation between himself and the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma. In response, the Blessed One said this: "Good, good, bhikkhu. The householder Ugga of Hatthigāma has correctly declared it. For those are the very same 8 wonderful and amazing qualities that are undeniably present in him, which I declared the householder Ugga of Hatthigāma does possess. Therefore, you must ponder and bring to mind what you witnessed by becoming inspired yourself on how Ugga of Hatthigāma, being a householder, is fully endowed with these 8 wonderful and amazing qualities." That's one. So now let's go to the next one. If you have any questions, please, let's keep it at the end. So about this, and I'll come back. This one again, these actually, there's 2 of them right now. It's the Paṭhama and Dutiya Hatthaka Sutta. This is about the lay disciple Hatthaka, the householder. And therefore, that was 8.22. These 2 are 8.23 and 8.24 of the Anguttara Nikaya. Again, from the Book of the Eights, therefore. So, Gahapati Vagga. So let's begin. Paṭhama and Dutiya Hatthaka Suttas. Hatthaka of Ālavi in Pali. Ālavi is the region where he was from. That's how he is known in the suttas. The famous Hatthaka of Ālavi. Parts 1 and 2. Once, while the Blessed One was staying at the Aggalava shrine in Ālavi, he addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, you must remember and always bring to mind how the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi is endowed with 7 wonderful and amazing qualities. And what are these 7? Remember, bhikkhus, that Hatthaka of Ālavi possesses faith. He is of a virtuous character. He possesses wise moral shame. He possesses wise moral consideration, hiri and uttappa. He understands and is learned in the Dhamma. He is generous and he is wise. In this way, bhikkhus, you must remember and always bring to mind how the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi is endowed with these 7 wonderful and amazing qualities." Having said this, the Tathagata arose from his seat and went back to his dwelling in the monastery. So here we have a similar situation, but not exactly. Because here, in the case of Hatthaka of Ālavi, Lord Buddha stated these 7 qualities. And we'll see what happens with that. Then, having put on his robes while taking his bowl and outer robe, by the way, when we hear by taking his outer robe, what that means is the 3rd robe we have. So we would generally be wearing the 2 robes, the lower robe and the upper robe, like this. But whenever we, as bhikkhus, we leave the monastery, it was a rule that we have to have the 3rd robe with us, just in case. It's a thicker robe, and you don't know what might happen to the weather, or you might be left outside, so you need to cover yourself, protect yourself. So you would have that extra support as the 3rd. And sometimes you hear in the other suttas how Lord Buddha folded his robes, or Venerable Ananda folded his robes into 4 and laid them out and as a pillow or a mat for him to sleep on, something comfortable to protect him from the ground. So that's the outer robe whenever you hear that. And obviously the bowl to carry with you. So having put on his robes while taking his bowl and outer robe, a certain bhikkhu went and paid a visit to the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi and sat on the prepared seat. just like it was with Ugga. By approaching that bhikkhu, the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi paid homage to him with clasped hands and sat to one side. Then that bhikkhu addressed Hatthaka of Ālavi thus: Friend, the Blessed One has declared that you are endowed with 7 wonderful and amazing qualities. What 7? Here, householder, the Blessed One stated, remember, bhikkhus, that Hatthaka of Ālavi possesses faith. He is of a virtuous character. He possesses wise moral shame. He possesses wise moral consideration. He understands and is learned in the Dhamma. He is generous and he is wise. In this way, bhikkhus, you must remember and always bring to mind how the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi is endowed with these 7 wonderful and amazing qualities. So he basically repeated verbatim what the Buddha said about him, Hatthaka. Then Hatthaka of Ālavi said, pay attention to what he says here, what he said. Bhante, were there any other white-robed lay disciples there when the Blessed One spoke these words? No, friend, there were no other white-robed lay disciples there when the Blessed One spoke these words. Ah, that is good to know, Bhante. That there were no other white-robed lay disciples there when the Blessed One spoke these words. Then, after accepting the food offered at the home of the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi, that bhikkhu rose from his seat and went on his way. And once the mealtime was over, the bhikkhu approached the Blessed One. And after paying homage to the teacher, he sat to one side and related the entire conversation that took place between himself and the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi. Now, in response, the Blessed One said this: Good, bhikkhu. That clansman is contented internally and is of fewness of desires, as he does not wish others to know about his wholesome qualities. Therefore, bhikkhu, you must remember and always bring to mind how the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi is in fact endowed with 8 wonderful and amazing qualities, not 7. The last of these 8 being the fewness of his desires. That was the first of the Hatthaka of Ālavi Suttas. Look at his modesty, his humility. He's asking, Bhante, was there any other lay people there? It's so heavy with consideration, with concern, because he's also thinking about, I wonder if that, I hope there were no other lay people, because that might increase somebody's envy or jealousy or make it emerge out of nowhere. Because, conceit could be developed if the people, especially people who would know about him, lay people, would hear that. A quality that you don't see in the world today much. Everybody's declaring they're this, they're that. They do something good, everybody has to know. Maybe we have been proponents of such ways of living. Everybody wants to become a peacock, flashing their, iridescent colors everywhere, showing people, I have this, I have that, I do this, I do that. Can we become like Hatthaka of Ālavi? Let's not really make it a big deal, Bhante, about this. They don't have to know. That shows humility, which today's society is teaching us to be anything but humble. Individuality, yeah, show off, flaunt what you have, special qualities, let the world know who you are. Why? Let me just worry about knowing who I am for myself. And everything else will fall into place. Just a few ideas. Let's go to Dutiya Hatthaka Sutta, the second one. Hatthaka of Ālavi, part 2. At one time, the Blessed One was staying at the Ugga shrine in Ālavi, when Hatthaka of Ālavi, together with 500 lay disciples, approached the Blessed One. And after paying homage to the teacher, they all sat to one side. Then the Blessed One said to Hatthaka of Ālavi, Hatthaka, you have a great number of followers accompanying you. Hatthaka, how did you come to have a great number of followers to accompany you? Bhante, it is by practicing these 4 methods of relatedness that take into account the consideration and love for others, as taught by the Blessed One. Relatedness here, you can also think of it as true and genuine empathy, deep level of consideration, which is completely merged in karuna, metta, mudita, and upekkha. So it comes from there. But this is a special quality that Hatthaka had. His level of deep relatedness, putting himself in other people's shoes and coming from where they were in everything that he did. And we'll see more here as he describes it himself. Bhante, when I know the method to show consideration and love to a particular person through the offering of gifts, then I offer them gifts. So if I know a person, I could really touch a person deeply. It's so significant for this person to receive gifts. It touches them deeply. Maybe because they never really received gifts. So he would perceive, he would see that. He would observe carefully, scrutinize, empathetically put himself in their shoes and say, aha. Now, he's not lying, he's not deceiving, he's not concealing his intentions. He simply wants to show consideration and love to the other person. He doesn't have a benefit, in a sense, other than seeing someone else happy. When I know the method to show consideration and love to a particular person through kind and sweet words, then I offer them kind and sweet words. If the person has never received them or really gets triggered in a beautiful way, feels fuzzy and warm inside when they hear sweet words spoken to them, it opens up their world, their heart like a lotus. When I know the method to show consideration and love to a particular person through assisting and taking care of them, then I offer them my assistance as I take care of them. So physical actions, demonstrably shown to the person, not just words. Yeah, I'll help you, but when they really need help, you're not there to take their trash out if they can't. You're not there to fix their tire or help them out with carrying some things. You're there. You show them through physical activity, physical actions that they need that support at that time, and that touches them deeply. It is interesting because 26 centuries later, in America, there is, I forgot his name. I always get it right. Anderson. Anyhow, he's a minister, I believe, at a church, but he's also a therapist that has written a book, especially given the work that he's done with couples. So he's a couples therapist and a person who preaches at church. He wrote this book called The 5 Love Languages. And it's a book that I have recommended countless times when I was a therapist and for people, couples especially, because oftentimes we think we're showing love to the other person, but it's not the right language of love. They don't know how to perceive it. It's interesting that the Buddha has talked about that in the form of Hatthaka of Ālavi, coming through and saying, Bhante, this is the language that I use. This person does not resonate with gifts. I remember when I was a couples therapist, I would hear couples talk and the person would say, well, I gave her a ring, that costs $10, $15, $20,000, but she just put it aside. It doesn't matter to her, as if. But I worked so hard for that. So for him, a physical object, expensive gift, is his way of understanding love being transferred. But she's not picking it up. It's not registering. What mattered to her was, can he sit down and spend 1 hour with me in the house without watching any TV? For her, that was more expensive than the $20,000, $30,000 worth of a ring. So these people have two different love languages. So Hatthaka is not saying love language, but you can see what he's saying. It's the same thing. Deep level appreciation of consideration for the other. And it's coming from love. So it is love and it is a language. But you need to be perceptive and caring enough to listen. So what we presume to be, it's a currency after all, of what is absolutely valuable to you. When the first Arabs showed up in deep parts of Africa, and they saw how the local Africans, the kingdoms deep inside the heart of Africa, were relating with gold, they couldn't believe their eyes. Gold was just gold. It was like, okay, what's the big deal? And the Arabs started trading salt for gold. Imagine giving them a kilo of salt and you got a kilo of basically 24-karat gold. That was their currency because they never had seen salt. And it was helping them to preserve the meat and protect them, to ferment, to preserve food. That's another way of looking at the consideration, or in this case, the currency that I'm referring to, not to belittle the importance of what's being said here, because we need to consider when we're interacting with one another. So what you value as a method of conveyance of something beautiful might not necessarily be so with the other person. So here, observing is key, and asking, communicating. This is how I am seeing it. How do you see it? What is more important to you? There's nothing wrong with saying or stating that question. The person might appreciate you even more. For some people, it's time. For others, it's physical action, like we saw. For others are words of kind words. And that means the world to them. They can go on for days and months and years maybe, and always the fuel that ignites them to do all that would be those few sentences they heard you say to them of love. They don't care about what you do for them, money-wise, this, that. Just the words meant so much. So the physical. When I know the method to show consideration and love to a particular person through impartiality that is wise and perceptive, then I offer them my impartiality that is wise and perceptive. Some people are looking to see if you're going to have any preferential treatment for someone else. Are you going to be biased? As a high school teacher, I would see this a lot from students, teenagers. Me being the adult in the room, they would be looking to see, okay, let's see, let's see, how well are you going to maintain a balance and equality here? Because that's the A student, and I'm not. Let's say I'm a D student or a B minus student or a C student, but this is what's happening, and I'm being unfairly treated by them. So the role of the adult is to come in and say, I see this, I see the unfairness, and no, you're wrong, to the A student if they did something wrong. So that is keeping the balance in the room. So the person feels that there is proper homeostasis, protective environment. The person sees you care for them, sees that you really appreciate them. There's a relatedness. So that's another quality that he had. Remember, he's answering the Buddha for his question. He said, how do you gather so many people around you? Why do they follow you? Lovingly, carefully. And so he's giving the answer to the Buddha. In addition, Bhante, there is also the fact that I am quite rich and come from a very wealthy family. Therefore, I think they would not be so eager to hear the words of someone who is destitute. So, I put my money where my mouth is, as they say. So he walks the talk. He has the money. He's a very wealthy businessman. And he knows Dhamma. Sadhu Hatthaka. Excellent. This is the Buddha responding. You have wisely gathered this great number of followers that are accompanying you. For in the past, if anyone had gathered a great number of followers to accompany them, they did so by practicing those very 4 methods of relatedness and take into account the consideration and love for others. So too, in the future, if anyone would gather a great number of followers to accompany them, they would do so by practicing these 4 methods of relatedness that take into account the consideration and love for others. And in the present, too, if anyone gathers a great number of followers to accompany them, they do so by practicing these 4 methods of relatedness that take into account the consideration and love for others. Then, after the Blessed One had instructed, encouraged, uplifted, and gladdened the hearts of Hatthaka of Ālavi and his companions with a talk on the Dhamma, Hatthaka of Ālavi, along with his followers, arose from their seats, worshipped, and circumambulated the Blessed One 3 times, and then went away. Soon after Hatthaka of Ālavi had taken his leave, the Blessed One addressed the Bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, you must remember and always bring to mind how the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi is endowed with 8 wonderful and amazing qualities. And what are these 8? Remember, Bhikkhus, that Hatthaka of Ālavi possesses faith. He is of a virtuous character. He possesses wise moral shame. He possesses wise moral consideration. He understands and is learned in the Dhamma. He is generous. He is wise, and his heart is ruled by fewness of desires. In this way, Bhikkhus, you must remember and always bring to mind how the householder Hatthaka of Ālavi is endowed with these 8 wonderful and amazing qualities. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. A few words about Hatthaka. What you don't see in the sutta is, after some time, well, first of all, let me backtrack. Hatthaka was his encounter with the Buddha happened right after his birth. The problem was a yakka had gotten hold of him. I think he was left in a cremation ground somewhere, and so he was really at the mercy of this vicious yakka who wanted to devour him. But on seeing the Buddha, the yakka gets scared and she hands over the baby, the infant, Hatthaka. And that's what the name means. Hatthaka means handed over to the Buddha. The yakka hands over the baby to the Buddha. And in turn, because being a monk, a bhikkhu, Lord Buddha is not going to keep a baby, raise a baby, right? So he passed the baby on to the king. So Hatthaka was handed over again. That's why his name, in fact, has both. Hatthaka, twice his name. So he was handed over to the king, who raised him as a prince. So one day, Hatthaka is sees Lord Buddha, and but despite his wealth, this and that, he's not happy. Hatthaka. So on seeing the Buddha, he approaches and he says, excuse me, Bhante, but are you happy? Very direct. And the Buddha says, yes. And he says, how? He says, well, let me answer you this way with a question. Would you say that a person who lives in a house, in a mansion, with a big bed, with 2 wives in it, and his wives, having all the wealth in the world, belly full, mom and dad, rich, this, that, servants. Could such a person be unhappy? And Hatthaka quickly says, oh, yes, because that's how he was. He says, there's your answer. So Hatthaka, from a very early on, was connected to the Dhamma. Now, given these responses that he gave to the Buddha about why people gathered around him, because that was his part of his personality, he would always listen, he would always observe, and he would give people what they really were in desperate need of receiving. And he would give it to them, whether it was physical activity, time, this, that, like I was saying about 5 love languages, or 4 in the case of Hatthaka. But the day came when Hatthaka died. Now he was also like Chitta. Chitta was also an Anāgāmi, a non-returner. And also we saw today Ugga, another Anāgāmi, non-returner. And like them, when he died, in his case, he went to Aviha, heaven. Aviha is the realm in the pure abodes, where only Anāgāmins, non-returners, could take, well, not could, but they will if they don't attain arahantship at the moment of death. So because of their love for the Dhamma, that's the only thing that keeps them. It's a thin thread of attachment. Attachment, nevertheless. Attachment to the Buddha is still attachment, or even the Dhamma or the Sangha. Attachment. So when he died, he also was reborn in the pure abodes. Now, while he's there, he feels sad. Now, this is a pure abode that only Anāgāmins are born into. This is like, there's nothing like this. Mara cannot penetrate. So in his longing for the Buddha, because the Buddha is still alive, he appears in front of the Buddha, but he wants to bow to the Buddha, but he collapses. He's distraught in his divine body, and Lord Buddha advises him to create for himself a more grosser body that allows him to stand on his legs, because this is a very refined state of being, realm of being. And he does. Hatthaka takes the more grosser form, and he bows down to the Buddha and he circumambulates at it as he was accustomed to. And when Lord Buddha asks him how he is, how he's feeling, because Lord Buddha knew who he's talking to, it's Hatthaka. And Hatthaka is sad, and he says, Bhante, wherever I go in the pure abodes, I'm always surrounded by devas who want to learn Dhamma from me. But the Buddha detects something. He says, what's wrong with that? But he says, Bhante, I'm sad also, because while I was alive, I did not spend enough time worshipping the Buddha, worshipping the Dhamma, worshipping and paying my respect to the Sangha as often as I could, because I was doing other things. He said, I wish I could have spent more time coming and spending time with the Buddha, studying the Dhamma more, and paying respect to the Sangha. So that is what we have of Hatthaka of Ālavi. Beautiful sentiments, beautiful, moving account, I think. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions and comments about both. They are both noble disciples. They are lay people. And so that you don't think that this Dhamma is only for like bhikkhus or monastics. You see how supremely beautiful their examples serve for us in this day and age. And they were business people. They had everything that many people aspire to having in life. So I hope it helps on your journey.
Thank you, Bhante. Just something small that I noticed and was confused about.
Hmm.
The Buddha says if anyone gathers a great number of followers to accompany them, they do so by practicing these four methods of relatedness. But in the world, you see people who are accompanied by large followings, and it's very in an unwholesome way. So it's confusing to me. Is the Buddha saying that this is the only way
Hmm.
to gather a great number of followers?
The quality of the followers, I think, matters here to make the distinction. When we hear the term followers or following, um, you can easily substitute that term with users or subscribers, right? Like in the world of Instagram and social media. Sometimes you have people who have millions of followers, millions and millions of followers. And then that in our facetious and our superficial world, that might seem wow. And everybody wants to become that or like that, have a huge following. Well, let's look at that followers or those followers. What kind of a following are we talking about? So you have individuals who are completely vulgar. There's not a single iota of virtue in them, in their speech, in their behavior. There's no consideration. So then we have to look at our own misinterpretation of what a true following is. You have followers like to presidents, to leaders, to business people. People want to emulate the richest people in the world or the biggest, most famous celebrities. And then you go ahead and take a peek into what type of a life this person is leading. Maybe if you're lucky, you might read a biography or autobiography and you see how miserable, terribly miserable they are, or they were. So it's not just any following. So please be careful. Well, to make the distinction as to what followers are we talking about, or Lord Buddha is talking about here, he's talking about individuals who were really, for example, if something happened in Hatthaka and Ālavi could not uh, financially be as influential as he was the day before, these people would still be with him. That is a different quality of followers, you see? Today, you don't have that. You can easily dissuade, you can easily move millions and millions of people by a single, I think they call it tweet or like something. Somebody makes a comment or a picture with this AI era that we live. You don't even know what you're looking at, whether it's true or not, because they're getting closer and closer to really, really copying something that is genuinely real, but it's fake. So people's uh, dedication uh, or adherence to you and what you stand for could easily change. For that, you need people of substance. Now we're talking about a different quality of followers. You can also look at the Buddha and his own followers of bhikkhus. Devadatta was one of his followers at one point, right? But oftentimes people are the followers of their own inequity. They are the followers of their own impurities, their own defilements, and their own issues, their own narratives and false beliefs. And they might present it in such a way that it's so convincing, but it requires a scrutinizing, laser sharp eyes of wisdom to see it for what it is. Because they don't, because everyone else is providing for that. So today in the world where there is supposedly many Dhamma teachers, there's so much Adhamma nevertheless. And you have countless people following fake teachers, fake Dhamma. This is not new. This has been going on for at least 2,000 years. Nalanda University had become corrupt. That's why it fell. That's why it was done for. Thousands of teachers, thousands more of students were all gone, burned, killed, slaughtered. It took, I think it took how many weeks? A few months for the blaze to really die out. That's how terrible it was. But it was the lack of Dhamma, ultimately, and the adhammic influences, because it was bringing in a lot of crowds, a lot of followers. You had groups of teachers within Nalanda teaching supposedly Dhamma. But when you look and compare, he's like, oh, that's not what the Buddha taught, though. But yeah, they had many followings. Today, you see this in the world, in big temples. But, you know, I've discussed this many times. But is this addressing your question, you think? Satisfactorily, I hope. If not, please tell me. I'll. I would also see this in teenagers in junior high. In America, we call it junior high, middle school, and how personalities change and people have this, you know, the mean girl or mean boy mentality. They gang up against someone, so everybody's vying for some type of a popularity. So it's a popularity contest to come out as the alpha. Well, that doesn't change when we become adults. Look at the world leaders today. They're just babies. They're teenagers with more influence, unfortunately, and dying bodies. But they want to eke out whatever influence they can to really destroy the planet and the populations while bringing in multitudes of followers. So here the Buddha is not advocating for having more and more followers, because in many, many places in the suttas, you see our Lord Buddha is talking about the value of seclusion. Not just for bhikkhus. Wise is the person who sooner or later comes to the understanding that seeking companionships is a huge detriment the older you get. Adding more and more and more and more people is not a blessing, folks. Because it's stealing you away from the precious time, which I began this discourse addressing from the start. Time is running out. The more companions you have, the more attention you have to give to people, to others. In other places in the Anguttara Nikaya, Lord Buddha says this. He says, also in the Sutta Nipata, he says the mind of the practitioner, it doesn't matter if you're a bhikkhu or not, layperson, when you're talking, it better be talking about Dhamma. But when you're talking, you're helping people, you're encouraging them, etc. You're inspiring them, okay. But in the back of your mind, you have to be functioning in a way where you're thinking, I can't wait to be alone. I can't wait for these people to leave me so I can go and do my thing. Leave me alone. He says this about himself. The Buddha is saying this. That's where I want to give you the Dhamma. Go practice. Leave me alone. I'll be doing my thing over there in my kuti. But then you have people who always want you. Yeah. Why? You can't tolerate solitude? Is that it? Already there's so much noise in your head. There's so much wrong beliefs in our head. Wrong dialogue, wrong beliefs, wrong narratives. Why drag the bhikkhu into that lousy, stinking, stench-filled world? First, get rid of it with the Dhamma that you already received from the Buddha himself. Cleanse first. And you won't be doing that if you keep like jittery as a June bug, jumping here and there from this companionship to that pub, to that group, to that platform, to that, I don't know, to keep yourself busy thinking that you're doing something Dhammic. You're not. If it is always your gaze that is pointed outwards. So we kind of got the glimpse of that when I mentioned to you at the end how Hatthaka of Ālavi later on came with his bag of regrets. He said, Bhante, I wish I basically was saying, I wish I didn't spend so much time with my followers. In a sense, that's what I can also pick up from what he said. When you're coming to pay homage to the Buddha, you're dropping the fact that you're surrounding yourself with so many followers. When you say, I wish I spent more time with the Dhamma, not to discuss the Dhamma, like many people delude themselves into thinking that they're actually practicing. They're not. They're far from it, from anything pure Dhamma. And similarly with the Sangha, to spend time with the Sangha. So that necessitates a certain level of seclusion on the person's part. It could be 5 minutes a day, but pure 5 minutes. However much you can afford, especially as lay people, you have responsibilities. A lot of responsibilities. Not like bhikkhus, we don't. So how much of your focus is, because this is a very important question you raised, Patachara, because unfortunately our culture is just like it used to be how much you own or what you owned defined you in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, the teens. Now it's how many followers you have. You have people who became famous because they have followers, and you really look and careful, like, why is this person famous? You have no clue. You just know that they have many followers, and that's the end. People talk about them, but what are they? Why do they have followers? You know, if you see a freshly dropped excrement on the street or anywhere, it's going to be attracting a lot of flies, a lot of followers. You have a lot of that, dung everywhere. But a drop of honey can also attract. So which one are we following? Yes. Any other thoughts, comments before we close for the day? Okay. Let's transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata devanāgāmins punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanāgāmins punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanāgāmins punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May you be protected by your own acts of generosity, by your sila, by how you treat yourself in your mind, in your heart, how you relate to yourself, with your heart. How do you treat yourself in your heart, in your mind? Is there any abuse? Change that if there is. That's the first step of being relatable and consideration, having consideration and love. Metta is not a word we keep telling ourselves. It's not an affirmation we keep telling ourselves. It's an actionable behavioral change that gives you joy now. As the Dhamma is, sanditthiko, it's immediate, it's effective, it's observable. in front of you. So you, without telling or convincing yourself of anything, you must be feeling that. And if you're not, that's okay. That's not an excuse to abuse yourself. That's okay. But look into that and say, am I tight somewhere? Am I attaching myself to some image? Usually that's what it is. That's what it is. You're attached to a view, a statement, something you've said to yourself. Or believe, a wrong view. So soften, like I said to you, encourage you in the beginning when we were sitting to meditate. Softness. Become the best friend that you always wanted to have. Relatedness. Listen to your heart. Heal yourself. And already you're practicing Dhamma. You're a pleasant person to be around for yourself first, and then others. You're living metta then. You are becoming more and more metta. So may you be joyful. May the devas protect you and your loved ones. May they rejoice in your presence on this planet. May your understanding of the Dhamma grow progressively, exponentially. The more you become genuine, true to the Dhamma and to yourself. You can't be otherwise. You can't be selective in that. If you're genuine to yourself, you're also genuine to the Dhamma. So until next time, Sukhi Hot.